Hi, everyone. I'm honored and delighted to be here with you today. This is an amazing meeting for a first-timer. I'm going to try and answer the question, do children have ideas? I bet you already have thought to yourself, I know you do, because someone already said this to me. Of course they do. What an obvious question. You may quickly have thought of some intriguing or complex idea that your own child or grandchild told you. But, surprise, surprise, you are not representative of the general population. Most of you, by virtue of your work, if nothing else, dwell in the world of ideas, but the general population does not. If you've spent extended time observing young children in school and at home, as I have, you will also realize that actually most adults, no matter what they tell an interviewer, do not behave as if children have ideas. And if you don't treat children as if they have ideas, they're less likely to go on doing it. And for a reason that I can't completely understand, to be honest, psychologists until very recently have discovered very little about when and how this complex and yet essential ability to develops. That gap in our scientific knowledge is very disappointing, to say the least, since I would argue that our capacity to build ideas is the single most powerful and distinctive feature of evolution as a species. But it's not too late. The answer to my opening question begins with a story about a man named Robert Kearns, who lived in Detroit in the 1960s. One day, as he was driving in the city in Detroit, it began to rain. He put on his windshield wiper, but as some of you, maybe many of you may recall, in those days, windshield wipers had only two speeds, on and off. Without the wipers, he couldn't see at all, but it was raining so lightly that when the wipers were on, they dragged across the windshield, making an irritating noise. Annoyed, his mind inexplicably wandered back to his wedding night, years before. You may wonder why. When he and his wife opened a bottle of champagne in their hotel room to celebrate. The cork flew off, hit the ceiling, and ricocheted back, hurtling right towards his eye. Luckily, at the very last second, he blinked, and his eye was saved. Sitting there in the rain in Detroit, he thought, why can't a windshield wiper be more like an eyelid? That idea led to his invention of the intermittent windshield wiper. An innovation, I can tell already I was right, that however trivial it may sound to you now, transformed the car industry, made millions and millions of dollars, and changed the experience of driving for all of us. John Seabrook wrote a book about this titled Flash of Genius. His book is terrific, but the title is wrong. Ideas don't come in flashes. It takes time to put an idea together, and everyone here knows that. It also takes time to develop the underlying capacities to do so. Nor are ideas only the province of geniuses. Nearly every child is born with the disposition and basic psychological mechanisms they'll need, and this all begins in infancy, with babies' insatiable appetite for knowledge. Within weeks of birth, infants begin noticing anything that's unexpected, which, when you're 6 months old, happens all day long. Whenever they notice something new, they watch, listen, grab, touch, shake, and put things in their mouths. All of these behaviors are efforts to make the unfamiliar familiar. I was thinking earlier, it's like the opposite of what novelists do. They want to resolve uncertainty, which leads them to find out what, where, who, and when. This helps explain the explosion of information acquired by humans before they are 3. By the end of their first year, babies also exhibit a second form of curiosity, one that, as far as we know, is unique to humans. They want to explain the unexpected. In other words, now, in addition to what, when, who, and where, they want to know how and why. Then, sometime in the following year, they acquire an amazing new tool to satisfy their hunger for epistemic knowledge. They learn to talk. What's even better, they learn to ask questions. Now they can find out not only about the concrete here and now, but also about the there and then and the invisible. Their hunger for information at this stage of life is voracious and omnivorous. Children between the ages of 2 and 4 ask, on average, 1 question per minute. And your children may have asked more than that. Many of their questions are about everyday experiences. And here is just one example of a 3-year-old asking her mother about their dog, Lucky. Why the dog poops outside? Because that's what animals do. Why don't we poop outside? Because we're people. But you said people were animals. Yeah, but people have houses. But this is Lucky's house too, right? Yes, but even so, Lucky's a dog. But they don't like to poop in a toilet? I don't know. Lucky's never tried it. But he might like it, right? Now, this is delightful and funny, but it also shows how strategic they are in their use of questions. How do we know it's strategy? Because research has shown that they persist when they don't get a satisfying answer and either stop or move on to a deeper, more equally relevant question when they do get a satisfying answer. However, not all of their inquiries are about the quotidian. A surprising number of their questions probe complex and sometimes abstract or elusive topics. Here are 2 examples that were actually shared with me before this meeting by members of this audience. They're both from 5-year-old children. The first is, I know how I was born, and I know how you were born. How was the first person born? And the second from another member of this audience was, so, is death just when everything just stops for you? Nor are these random one-off queries. Children between the ages of 3 and 5 often probe the same topic for days, weeks, and even months. Here's one example of a little girl who asked questions about death repeatedly over a period of 5 months. The mom's telling the little girl about her pet who just died. And he got himself ready to die, Laura. He took his nest down and he knew he was dying and he got himself ready. He knew he was dying? Yes, he knew. That's the father. How did he know he was dying? He could feel inside, and the father pipes it again, a feeling in the air. And the little girl says, I don't want to die. And the mother says, we're not going to. Several hours later, in another part of the living room, the child is recorded saying, I wonder what it feels like to be dead. This was taken from a faculty member in a study, a faculty member's daughter many years ago. But these phenomena are not just the province of families who live in university towns. We asked 275 parents from all over the United States and across a wide range of socioeconomic groups to tell us about the questions their 4- and 5-year-old children had asked them. Over 50% of our subjects reported that their children asked questions about some specific topic on at least 5 and as many as 25 occasions. These sustained lines of inquiry unfolded over a period of time spanning anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 months. What did the children want to know about? In order of prevalence in our data, death in the afterlife, nature and biology, extinction, mechanical systems, the social world, and outer space. Now, one of the interesting things we've learned from research is that these intellectually rich lines of questioning, what the psychologists Barbara Tizard and Martin Hughes call episodes of intellectual search, are most likely to occur when children are not busy. In other words, even in childhood, ideas love leisure. Why do I stress that particular finding? Because as I mentioned before, when they are toddlers, children ask on average a question a minute. But once they go to school, where the day gets busy, things change precipitously. In elementary school, children ask at most 3 questions per hour. My own research has shown that by 5th grade, many children go the whole day without asking one single epistemic question at school. For many, the avid curiosity of early childhood never reappears in any robust or sustained form. Now I'm going to set that aside for a minute and turn to the other developmental building block of ideas, invention. I first realized how important invention was when I was trying to measure curiosity in classrooms. When children are free to do what they want, they play. And much of their play, in my research, looked like it had involved exploration, but not all of the time. When they weren't trying to figure out how things work and what things are made of, they were devising new things. In other words, they used information, objects, symbols, and skills to skills to acquired from a variety of sources to solve interesting problems. And this is just one photograph of children inventing instead of exploring. Now, the puzzling thing about my observational discovery about the role of invention was that most developmental scientists claim that before the age of 8, children are incapable of innovation. What evidence do they have for that claim? In one foundational study of this, children were invited to retrieve a small basket containing a sticker, which sat at the bottom of a clear plastic bottle with a wide opening at the top. The children were offered 2 objects to use as they figured out how to haul up the basket, a string and a pipe cleaner. Under the age of 8, the children were unable to solve the problem. That is, unable to choose the pipe cleaner, not the string, bend the bottom into a hook, drop it down to hook the basket, and lift up the basket to get the sticker. They could do all of the component tasks when asked to, but seemed unable to spontaneously coordinate the necessary pieces of knowledge. Scientists refer to this as young children's inability to cope with an ill-defined problem space. In other words, they are unable to keep in mind all the elements they need to first visualize a solution and then work backwards towards the sequence of steps required to achieve it. It's an elegant set of studies. And yet, watching children at play, it's clear they invent frequently. They make up stories, games, songs, and even whole worlds. They devise traps, weapons, and habitats. They explain outer space and one another's bad behavior. And these are just 3 examples taken from 3 different studies of the kinds of inventions children build in more controlled group settings. I don't think children fail at invention per se. Rather, they fail at solving the researcher's problem, an uncompelling problem at that, and one which typically has only one solution to it. I mean, would you want to solve that kind of problem? No. Now, to test this possibility, my students and I tried a different approach. We told 4- and 5-year-old children, subjects, an exciting story about a character who needed to rescue a loved one stranded across the river. That's the scenario up at the top with a river. We also invited them to choose from a range of toy characters to populate the scenario. Then we asked them to come up with a solution to get the character across the river to help their loved one. The children had a wide variety of appealing materials at their disposal. And we added one more twist. We were interested in finding out whether it would help them if they had a chance to think about their idea ahead of time. So in one condition, we invited children to speculate out loud about their idea before actually working with the materials. We said things like, "Do you have anything in mind? What are you planning?" In a second control condition, we simply invited them to chat about the materials. Said things like, "Which of these is your favorite color? Have you seen these before?" All of the children, every single one, came up with a solution to the task. So, what did we learn? It seems 4-year-olds can invent, given the right conditions. However, the children's solutions were not all the same. Subjects who had been invited to speculate and think out loud about their idea ahead of time came up with inventions that were both more complex and more novel than the children in the control condition. And you can see the child in the idea talk condition said something about his complicated catapult, like it can fly and these wrap around their tummies, and if they fall, they'll land safely on the water because these are waterproof. And another child in the control conditions made a bridge, came up with a solution, and said, it's a bridge. When we asked them at the end of various other manipulations to talk a little bit more about their invention, to reflect on it, because sometimes what you do and what you think about what you did are different, we found that here too, children in the idea condition spoke in much richer and more complex ways about what they had thought. Well, at first I thought I could have made a higher bridge. And then I thought I was going to like stack a tower here and put this noodle across. But then I was thinking it wouldn't be long enough. So I thought there was another way to make something high. And I thought that using this might be good to make it not fall down. So whatever I was making, I thought there should be something that holds it up, because then it would just fall down probably. And then I thought maybe something high would be a zip line. Now, what's really important to me, besides the impact of the condition, is that in this condition, they treated their ideas as if they were objects of thought. In the last year, we've gone a bit further with that idea of how to know when a children's developing their idea by identifying 4 behavioral signs that tell us when a child is engaged in an episode of idea building. And they integrate knowledge from separate sources, they revise, and they often revise right in front of you and out loud. They work on an idea over a sustained period of time, and they treat the idea as an object of thought. These signs show up when children play, construct narratives, ask questions, and ruminate on things that interest them. Using these indices will allow us to find out more about when, where, and how children pursue ideas, because we still know far too little. So to sum up so far, this is how I conceptualize this developmental trajectory. The ability to pursue ideas begins with a hunger for knowledge, which emerges in infancy. That's why it's at the top, or it's supposed to be at the top. During toddlerhood, it is joined by its close partner, invention. By the age of 4, children can and do pursue ideas. That is, they integrate knowledge from disparate sources to explain complex phenomena and solve problems. That, by the way, is my definition of an idea. But those problems must be problems to them. In the right circumstances, children can be nudged toward treating ideas as objects of thought, which, as you all know, strengthens their toolkit enormously. Most young children are eager intellectuals, regardless of their IQ. It's hard to keep them from mulling over the problems that intrigue them. I know that as a scientist, but anybody who's watched 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds can see that just watching the fervor with which they pursue the thing that's plaguing them. Why do I think this matters so much? Well, if you haven't already thought of your own favorite example of ideas that have shaped society, here are a few from a long list of my favorites. I really regret that I didn't bring my slide of one particular person. I'm going to show you a few pictures in a minute. But I stupidly left one at home. You don't need the slide because he's here in the audience. Brian Stevenson's idea that everybody is better than their worst deed is an idea that's changing the way we think about incarceration and justice. And then less exciting are the ones I have pictures of. Alan Turing, who has developed the Turing machine and the basis of all computer science. Murasaki Shikibu, who by most accounts wrote the first novel. Friedrich Hayek, who is credited by many with articulating the core principles of neoliberalism, a reminder to maybe only a few of us that not all ideas are good. And I know you don't all agree with me about that. And to bring us to the current moment, Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson, whose new book, Abundance, develops a powerful alternative idea of how government might function, one that could make the most of invention and technology, but for the common good rather than the enrichment of just a few. We urgently need a society filled with people who know how to consider other people's ideas and also come up with their own. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir to say that to you, but now we have learned that this capacity begins in early childhood. Our challenge is to figure out what schools can do to foster rather than suppress its growth. Many people in research and education are pursuing their own avenues to answering that question. But for me, I'm putting my money on a new question, which I'm determined to answer in the coming years. I believe it's key to the educational enterprise. Next, I want to know how it feels to pursue an idea. Thank you. Questions?
We all know how it feels to pursue an idea because there are all these very mature children out there. So please direct your questions to Susan.
Yes.
Thank you, Susan.
Yes, there we have one right in the front. Yes,
Thank you,
thank you.
Susan. Jim Gates, University of Maryland. You had a list that started up there of ideas that were essentially afterlife and end in outer space. And I'm very curious whether your studies allow you to look at correlations to how people end up as adults and the distribution of those ideas. I'm sorry, I'll try again.
Yes,
Oh,
thank you.
that's good.
I said, thank you, first of all, Jim Gates, University of Maryland. You had a list of concepts up there that started with afterlife and ended with outer space. And I'm curious whether your studies allow people to look at correlations of what children think which thoughts and where they end up as adults.
That's a hard question. I can't answer that question. Do you mean what they end up being preoccupied by as adults?
I'll take that.
Okay. Well, I think the data speak indirectly to that. So turns out it's quite common for children to ponder over death, because that's not only a few of us who have to worry about that. And it turns out we start worrying about it when we're very little. The interesting thing to me is that we don't just worry about it, we think about it. And most young children try to develop ideas about it. I doubt that all of those people go on to be, well, I don't know, maybe everybody goes on being preoccupied by death, but I don't think there's a correlation, because I think it's too general in both periods. So no, I have no data, and I know of no data that shows a direct line. There are some people, I have a good friend who's a developmental psychologist whose research is also about intellectual growth in childhood, and he talks about remembering as a child that he wondered why something was there versus not there. I don't know that every child thinks about something like that, and he grew up to build on that work. But I don't think we have any data to show specifically correlations between particular preoccupations in childhood and adulthood. Yeah.
There we go. Linda.
Linda Greenhouse, Stockbridge, Massachusetts.
Oh, we're neighbors.
Oh, okay. So the colloquies that you had up there, the one about the dog pooping and the one about the death.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the parents really just wanted to get out of the conversation. I mean,
Right.
they were not satisfactory.
Right.
So I wonder, from your perspective as an educator, is there a better way for a parent or a teacher to satiate that natural curiosity instead of saying, well, you're a person and that's a dog,
Well, I would put a different spin on this. I'm going to give two answers to you. One is actually, that was a pretty long conversation. They stayed pretty engaged, and that's pretty great, because one thing children learn is whether or not it's okay to ask questions. And so you're right, she was sort of trying to dance around it, and she was, but that child is a great example of someone who persevered. She was digging, and that shows strategy on her part and a sort of tolerance on the part of the adult to stay in the conversation. What happens very often at school and in some homes, and some of the time for all of us, is a parent who won't even answer the question at all. And one of the things, when I talk about this research in schools, teachers very understandably say, we don't have time to answer all of the questions that children ask. And that's fair enough, although, this is a whole other talk. They should make time, because there's not one other thing children are doing in school, except for kids who need help learning to read. There's nothing else that's as intellectually important as helping them learn how to pursue their curiosity and engage with others in thinking about things. So that's my own application of it. But yes, in general, what I would encourage, certainly educators, I try not to tell parents what to do, because I am one. I know how hard it is to do what you should do. But is to make sure that you engage in at least one conversation that takes more than 5 turns. I know that's not the way teachers are thinking, but to have real conversations with children on a regular basis, and to create time and space in the classroom for having those conversations. I have a lot of examples in other work I've published and talks I've given where teachers say things like, great question, but we don't have time for that now, we're doing science. And I'm like, what? So yes, make time and take it seriously. And I think that mom did a pretty good job. She just didn't quite get what her daughter was trying to find out about.
Time for one quick question. There we go.
Oh,
Hi, Bob Tarjan, Princeton University.
Hi.
I am a computer scientist, and I have a rather strange question.
uh-oh.
Do machines have ideas? Which is to say, do you think you and your colleagues, I mean, obviously, based on your work, children are a lot different than machines and learn in different ways. And we're all concerned about AGI, artificial general intelligence. And I just wonder if applying your techniques to some of these large language models would shed more light on this question than we're getting from all the stuff that we, the computer scientists, are doing.
I love that question. I'm not going to answer it in a satisfying way, but I always think about when was the last time I changed my mind about something big. I think everybody should ask that question. And the last time I did was when I first learned about ChatGPT, and I began to be told by computer scientists where I work how it happened, how they did it. And I've always rejected the idea of behaviorism. I always thought it didn't capture what I wanted to know about the development of thinking. And when I heard the science behind ChatGPT, I thought, I got it wrong. I didn't understand how quickly the human mind, like the machine, could take in information and learn from it. And so I began to doubt myself about the similarity. I never thought there was a real similarity between the machine, a computer, and the human mind. And now I'm beginning to think I was wrong. And I was wrong to reject behaviorism. It's just happening at a different speed than I always thought it was. And so I guess I predict that machines will have ideas, except, one more piece to my answer, except for the new work I'm doing. And this is the part I don't know the answer to. It feels incredibly good to have an idea. I plan to try to show that empirically in the coming years, but I don't know if a computer can feel good from having an idea. And so I'm going to stick with children. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you.